my voice, is it, Jeff? All right, it is 6 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. Seeing it is 6 o'clock, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Joint Committee on Infrastructure and the Board of Public Works, today being June 15th, 2022, and again at 6 p.m. And the meeting is being held at City Hall Auditorium, 229 Main Street. And this meeting has been posted on Zoom and at the public library. If you want to check out, please go to the resources, and also it's at the city website. So therefore, welcome and all, and can we call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can call the roll. I will just note, I apologize, the agenda reads City Hall Auditorium, but obviously we are in the chamber this evening. There was audio equipment issues upstairs, which is why we had to preemptively move the meeting down here. With that being said, Mr. Chair, I'm going to just move right into roll call, if I may. Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Jetty.
Here.
Alderman Como. Alderman Como, it does not appear to be present, though the record should reflect that he did indicate that he would be, if able, participating via Zoom, so I'll keep a lookout for him. Alderman Gouvier.
Here.
And then Mayor Donchis.
Here.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Here.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Here.
Commissioner Lemon.
Here.
And Commissioner Shea. I'm not hearing Commissioner Shea. With 8 present, you do have quorum.
Also, can the clerk please record our special guests?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chair. Also joining us this evening, we have, besides myself, as for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. We have Director Lisa Foto of the Department of Public Works. We have Solid Waste Superintendent Jeff LaFleur. Joining us in the chamber this evening, we have the architect Janet Slamenda. On via Zoom, we have Dub Jaffrey of Harvey with the construction manager, and I believe we have Richard Parks, who is the engineer with us, working with Janet. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. Doria Brown, the city's energy manager as well. Thank you.
Man, you were almost in trouble.
I was.
All right, just a little bit of housekeeping issue. I don't know who is going to be transcribing this particular meeting, if it's going to be Public Works or the automatic transcriber. And I would like to welcome Commissioner Mr. Shea to the meeting. And but when it's your turn to speak, can you, other than the mayor and board of aldermen, because our transcriber knows our voices, can you just mention your name? And that way it will be recorded to you. So if you could do that, I appreciate the courtesy. Okay, and that'll be it. Moving on, we do have public comment. Anybody in the chamber would like to have public comment? And seeing nobody is in the chamber, I will now refer to Zoom. Anybody out there in TV land that wants to make a comment? Don't see anybody, so now we'll move to number 3 on the agenda, is the approval of minutes. Without exception, I will approve the minutes of the previous meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Number 4 on the agenda, presentation of the alternative energy source, and we're going to open up the comments on this particular thing, and there are several presentations that should be informative to the members of this board. So we'll start it off with Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this evening, the only real substantive agenda item is this item, and this is a conversation that is something that we should have been having for a couple months now, and it had been on our agenda, but due to various conflicts, we weren't able to have it, and so I asked for this meeting in particular because I wanted our energy manager to join us, Doria Brown. Doria, thanks for joining us. She could not be here on our regularly scheduled meeting, which we will be having next Thursday. And the reason why her attendance is so important is she's going to be giving a presentation on the alternative energy strategies that we've looked at over the course of this project. And so to set the table and to kind of frame the conversation this evening, while we are under construction for the new DPW administrative office building, we have contemplated some differing alternative energy type of solutions. One of them is actually a course of action that we're seeking guidance on, and this is in your packet. It's what we refer to as alternative number 5, the alternative hot water supply return and site piping. This is something that we would need additional funds for, and my memo goes into detail as to the additional costs. But essentially, this would allow for the hot water supply system to be added to the office building, and it would capture the heat generated from the landfill itself. The total cost would just be under $800,000. I would note that it has a 61-year payback if we wanted to do this. But it is not something I would recommend to you all because of that payback schedule. It is not time sensitive either. It is something that if you opted to do at another point when the economics became more favorable, you could do that because the way we proceeded with the project in hand, we had built the infrastructure to be in place. So if this alternative decided to come to fruition at any point, you know, the city would be able to do it. But as of it stands right now, we would need an additional $800,000 to be able to pursue this course of action. And it is the alternative energy strategy that rose to the top. So I'm looking for direction from you all tonight if this is something you would so choose. If you do choose that, I want to just make sure we note that we would have to get additional bond authorization. But separate from that, I wanted to make sure we had an overall direction and conversation about alternative energy and the strategies, you know, we should employ. I'll note that this is a conversation that we've had regularly. We haven't had this just one-off, but it's a continuous conversation. It's one that Doria Brown and I have participated in I should say Doria Brown has participated in helping us develop a presentation this evening that will help summarize some of the ideas that we've explored. And I think it will be very informative to hear her presentation. And so for those of you who don't know Doria, she has been with the city for just under 3 years now, I believe. She has a background in environmental science. She has a bachelor's degree from Franklin Pierce. She's got both public and private sector experience. Prior to being with the city, she worked as the sustainability specialist and really ran the alternative energy programs for Worthen Industries. As you may know, Worthen is a big manufacturer here in southern Nashua. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Doria now to give her presentation.
Right, and if I may first, just another little house cleaning item. We are joined by Alderman Como, is in attendance. He came in at a 6:06. So I welcome Ms. Brown. Take it away, please.
Hello, this is Doria Brown speaking, just to be clear on the transcript.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm trying to get into present mode right now, so please bear with me. There we go. Just have to click the purple button. So the DPW new build went through multiple options for our electricity and HVAC in the building. I want to thank the engineering and architecture staff for looking through all of these options and kind of making it very easy for me to evaluate them. So I just wanted to share that appreciative sentiment before I start. The first part of the project is what Tim was referring to earlier, so I didn't want to over elaborate here since he did a very good job of explaining it. But to simplify it, it was taking the heat from the landfill gas to energy generators, which create a lot of excess heat, to heat water, bring it to the building to heat the new build. That project would cost about $792,000 with an annual savings of $13,000 and a simple payback of 61 years, which is quite significant. If you look at the chart here, it's very daunting to see all those years go by with the payback. The next option was geothermal. Admittedly, the group didn't really dig into this too much because the initial investment in this project would be $657,000 just to drill a well for geothermal. That doesn't include equipment costs, which would be the equipment to actually heat the building after drilling down. That would have an annual savings of $13,000, and without calculating in the extra costs for the heating apparatuses with geothermal, there's a 50-year payback, so it would be much greater than that after we calculate in that equipment. The other option was heating the building with electric. So this is actually an interesting project and one that I would have been excited about, but to heat the building with electricity, it would cost $20,000 for a full-on electric heating system versus heating with natural gas, which would cost $4,500 per year for the building. So there's a little bit over $20,000 more in energy costs to heat the building with electric versus natural gas. The other option for the project is primarily electricity, and that is to create a resilient microgrid on that system. I'm going to elaborate here a little bit more because I feel like this is a more complicated part or option in this project. So we have that landfill gas to energy plant on the premises from the landfill, and a group called Energy Power Partners runs that energy plant, and they came up with this really interesting project where they would purchase the lines from Eversource for a quoted amount of $398,000 or $398,267.19 to be exact. And the city would invest $200,000 to help purchase those lines. This amount is very high. Eversource comes up with these calculations themselves, and they quoted us in a line-by-line itemized quote as to why it is expensive, and it was extremely long. They went from the rubber from the lines, the wood, like the meters, like every single piece of that project they quoted us for to get to that $398,267. After purchasing those lines, the city would purchase our electricity from Energy Power Partners at a 20% discount. This would virtually eliminate our delivery fees for our energy, which is an awesome option because right now delivery fees are costing us between 15 and 17 cents per kilowatt hour, while our unit we're paying just for the electricity is about 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So if we calculate that together, that's 20 cents per kilowatt hour. So that 20% reduction would be very favorable for the city, delivering us a $10,400 savings per year. The power plant, which is the landfill gas to energy plant, has a capacity to generate about 15,000 megawatt hours per year, which could deliver us more savings in the future as DPW takes advantage of creating more infrastructure there, which could include more buildings and electric car charging stations, and bringing in more electric equipment like garbage trucks, street sweepers, and stuff that's really going to help us reach our sustainability goals and decrease our carbon footprint. This has a simple payback of 19.2 years, but I foresee that payback decreasing as another building is built on that area and as we bring in more electric vehicle infrastructure on that space. I see this project as really setting us up for a sustainable and resilient energy future. Because when you create a microgrid, that is actually an incredibly big deal. A microgrid is something that is its own grid outside of your utility. So let's say there's a large power blackout. That area will still have energy because Eversource doesn't own the lines there. The generation is on site and it is its own kind of little micro section of our power grid. The DPW building will have energy if there is a big energy loss event. Just the value there on the resilience side would be huge. Let's say we need a home base or somewhere. If there's a very big, large power outage event, we could use that microgrid to set us up as a space that has energy to help our community recover from something like that. I can keep rambling about it more and more, but I'm just excited to see a project like this happen. To speak to Energy Power Partners, they are a very competent firm here in doing a project like this because they have one in Massachusetts where they purchased their power lines and created a microgrid, and they have found success there. So I think that they'd be able to properly manage the lines and equipment there and provide us energy without any sort of lapses and power. So I'm gonna go on to the next part of the project, but revisit this in a little bit. So another part of the project we explored was electricity from solar, which again is an exciting project to me because I'm always into getting more solar on our buildings. But here the DPW roof is kind of small on the new build, and it wouldn't have enough space for us to put enough panels to completely power the building. So that brings our annual savings here down to $5,800, and that gives us a simple payback of 43 years. We have explored other options for solar outside of outright buying a solar array. Our schools, Lake Street Fire Department, and Transit Garage have explored the power purchase agreement option, and that's when an impact investor purchases the solar array for the city and allows the impact investor to actually take a tax credit and decrease the cost of the solar array, and then those buildings pay for the electricity from the impact investor. I wouldn't recommend a project like that for this because it would be an undersized solar array and we wouldn't get the maximum benefit of having 100% of that power be provided by a power purchase agreement or an outright purchased solar array. So I'm gonna summarize some of my results and findings. How it really comes down here is that there are a lot of viable options, but they're incredibly expensive, and I'm not 100% sold on their ability to benefit the community financially, as well as benefit them on the sustainability side of things. I think that the microgrid project is the most viable because it makes financial sense. It sets us up for a future and resilient and sustainable energy infrastructure, and it has a very big carbon emission savings. With that 15,000 megawatt hours that plant can produce, it could offset 12,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year, which would be equivalent to removing 2,300 cars from the road, planting 13,000 acres of forest, and powering 1,300 homes, which is incredibly significant. Heating the building with natural gas makes the most sense to me because it is less costly than heating with electric, and the savings from not using an electric system and using natural gas could be invested in other areas where we can have more energy efficiency projects. In the future, I do see an opportunity in the new build to retrofit heat pumps, which is an electric HVAC option, which can be done after the building is built, and that can offset natural gas use and help drive down the carbon emissions from that building to kind of cover the natural gas usage, and it could be another money-saving project in the future that could be funded by the savings from not using a fully electric system in the first place. I know I just rambled a lot. I get very excited about these things, but I want to open the floor for any questions.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So just one last point on the microgrid concept. So as I said, that this conversation about alternative energy has been iterative. And so one of the things to point out is the microgrid strategy in and of itself is one that's been a conversation that has been evolving over the last couple months, and it hasn't been one singular conversation, but one collectively as a team we've been talking about to try to figure out, as I said, there's a lot of moving parts. But as Doria pointed out, the cost, of almost $400,000 was just given to us, I think, recently, within the last couple of days even. Yeah. So it is something we're just still continuously learning about. If this is something that this body wanted to pursue, again, I would note it would take an additional appropriation of about $200,000 to be able to do it. And that's something that we could talk about, but I want to just make sure that I am flagging for everyone that this isn't a stagnant conversation. It's one that we are continuously having as we recognize the need to be exploring these alternative energy sources.
Thank you, Director Cummings. I do have one question. Whatever gets decided today, that this committee will have a second bite at the apple, potentially in the future, because from what I understand, is the hope that we may build a garage on that particular site for the trucks and stuff like that to get them out of weather and everything else. So that's going to take new construction. So whatever's going to happen, we can take the time to develop it and to look at it and come up with a better plan in a short order. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also to if I may, to direct a photo, conversation we were talking today, geothermal, I mean, there's some variance or something like that, not in variance, but between where the landfill is and the river, it's almost untouchable. Am I correct to do something? And it may not be 100% feasible in that line. Because of pollutants.
The landfill is in a groundwater management zone. I think that's what you're referring to, Alderman O'Brien. I don't know the regulations in terms of geothermal wells and how that would play in. That would something we'd have to contact DES.
Whatever it is, to me, it sounds expensive with EPA. Yes.
It could be.
Yeah. Anybody else with questions of the board? Alderman Dow.
Yeah, I do have a question I think I know the answer to. On Energy Partners, I have two questions. One, would their infrastructure lines be underground? And if not, any repairs that have to be done, do they do the repairs?
I believe those lines are above ground, and they would be responsible for doing the repairs as the electric line owners.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, just one other follow-up question. If we went with Energy Partners, would that preclude us using solar panels on top of the garage if we built it? Or would that just be addition to?
So that is an interesting question. It would not stop us from having solar panels on top of the garage. I would recommend the system that powers 100% of that garage and no more, because we would not be connected to the Eversource grid, and any excess that we put out into the grid might not be eligible for net metering.
Thank you.
For the lines, do you know those are enough lines?
Energy lines?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Jude Lemon, I'm from the Board of Public Works.
No. I think that it would be more than enough energy lines, yes.
So if there was something like I don't know this is possible, but if we built a huge building, that would be enough to power that building
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Commissioner Shea.
Commissioner Paul Shea, what can our good friend Alderman and Representative O'Brien do up at the State House to fix our net metering problem? Because that seems like if we can produce energy, but we can't take advantage of it and add it to the grid, that seems like a really defeating policy.
So Alderman O'Brien, you've been very helpful actually in the net.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Brown.
You're welcome. On the net metering side, we've actually increased the net metering cap just for municipalities to 5 megawatts, which is something that private companies cannot do. we have more favorable net metering policy for municipalities than anybody else. The reason we wouldn't be able to net meter specifically if we put solar panels on that garage in a place where Eversource doesn't own those lines is because Eversource would not be the presiding utility there. It would be another private group that owns the electric lines. Outside of that, if we were to put more solar on buildings and utilize more like commercial style solar arrays, which would be at that 5 megawatt cap, we could net meter that into our grid, which I don't see us having a project larger than that at the moment.
So if we did a bigger deployment, we would use alternate lines, you're saying? Or I guess if, say we do something like Derry, they've got a 2.4 megawatt solar array on top of their landfill. If we were to explore deploying something like that, would kind of giving the rights to these lines over to this company potentially interfere with that potential in the future? And would there be any barrier to the feasibility of doing something like that in making the decision to support the microgrid?
So that, again, is a great question. I don't see that as being an issue because the Eversource lines aren't far away from the microgrid that we would be creating. We could tie into Eversource lines in a different area and still be able to net meter from our landfill. It's a vast space, and we wouldn't be buying out all the lines in that neighborhood, so we'd be able to still find a way to interconnect to the Eversource grid.
That's good to know. I don't want to domineer the time, but if I may ask.
I do have one other person
Yeah,
online.
I'll take a rest.
We can come back to you, Commissioner Shea. Alderman Como, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I had my question answered, so I can yield for now. Thank you.
Very good, sir. Yes, Commissioner Shoneman.
Commissioner Shoneman, Board of Public Works. I just would like a little bit of clarity from Ms. Brown. This is all kind of new to me. Very interesting. If the city fronts the $200,000 to buy the lines from Power Partners, they pay the money, but they don't own them.
Yes. So if we buy the lot, if Power Partners purchase the lines and we give them $200,000 to help along with that, we are ensuring that another company owns the lines and then paying them for that energy. It sounds like a bad deal when you first think about it, but in helping them purchase the lines, we are ensuring that we'll have access to 15,000 like carbon-free megawatt hours, like free renewable energy power that we would have access to, and we're decreasing our energy rates by 20%. And that's something that we can actually probably try to negotiate down in the power purchase agreement side with Power Partners as well. So I hear you, but I do think it's a good deal to be able to create this microgrid with them and have access to that renewable energy, which is a significant portfolio that we wouldn't get from a solar array. For perspective, our largest hydroelectric plant produces about the same amount of electricity that, actually no, both of our hydro plants together produce about the same amount of electricity that the landfill gas to energy plant is generating. So it's a very large amount of power that we'd be able to use for our infrastructure in the future. So it's a $200,000 investment to be able to have access to that.
Okay, that makes sense. So along the same line, the energy we'd be purchasing at a 20% discount, is that going to be a significant savings to heat the building versus natural gas?
So that wouldn't be a heating aspect to the project. It would be
Okay.
just for the electricity to
Just-
power
okay.
the building.
So we're still going with natural gas
Yeah.
for, potentially, for heating the building, and this is just to provide, the microgrid provides electricity for other electricity needs in the building.
To add to that thought for your notes, In the future, there's an opportunity after the building is built to add heat pumps, which would be an electric form and an incredibly efficient form to heat and cool the building in a kind of like an area by area basis, so that we can decrease the amount of natural gas we're using and take advantage of the electricity that we're getting directly from the Landfill Gas to Energy plant.
Okay. I see. Thank
Ms.
you.
Brown, I do have an additional question. We live in New England, so
We do.
we're prone for rain, snow, sleet and hail, hurricanes, blizzards, and all the rest. And I think Mr. LaFleur can testify that's a very open area. So I imagine wind speeds at any particular time. So these lines are overhead. And like anything else, there can be some form of mechanical failure. If that is the case, who maintains the system? Right now, if we drop a line, lose a phase or something like that, public service comes out. What would happen in that type of scenario with this project that we're talking about?
Power purchase partner, or the power, what are they called? I'm sorry. I said I wouldn't mess it up in the meeting, and I just did.
You're doing a fine job.
The
Environmental power
environmental-
partners.
Thank you. The environmental power partners would own the lines, and they would be responsible for keeping them up. And I think that they have the full ability to do that because they're already managing a microgrid in which they purchase the lines. So they have the equipment and the personnel to come out and fix those lines.
Okay. And follow up, if I may. Additionally, let's say something did happen, waiting for the crew. This building will have a generator, so we'll be able to maintain without a collection service.
Yes.
Thank you. Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Brown, I know that you're passionate about conserving energy and, reducing our carbon footprint and getting away from burning fossil fuels. Your presentation was very thorough and but a lot quicker than I could follow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not because of your presentation, but just I'm sure I'll have more questions after I have a chance to go through it and read it in detail. But one of the questions I had as you started talking about the 61-year payback, the $800,000 initial investment for this hot water system, and the 61-year payback. What is that based on? What does that mean? What's the 61-year payback? How do we pay back that?
So a payback is through your energy savings. A project has a payback when it is efficient enough for you to not have to spend as much money every single year. So in that 60-year payback, upon investing that close to $800,000, our savings would be $13,000 per year. And if you divide that number by the 13,000, you would get our simple payback for that project. If you want to get even more specific, you could have a ROI, which would include maintenance costs to the equipment and all of the upkeep and replacements that you'd have to have there. And that would probably increase the ROI by year. So a simple payback is just the cost of the project divided by your annual savings, and your ROI is the cost of the project, adding in the cost of maintenance of that system, and then dividing it by the savings per year.
Ms. Brown, if you want to bring that slide back up, if you so wish.
Okay.
And then the people at home could also see it. It may help Alderman Jettie digest a bit.
Oh. Am I back
No,
here?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, you're fine. It's a simple request. So here we have the $792,000. If you divide that by the annual savings, you'll get a 61-year payback which is shown in this chart here, which is a year-by-year example of savings minus the initial investment, or the initial investment for the project minus your annual savings per year.
Okay.
Follow up?
So I think, everybody's aware that, the price of natural gas has been going up and is forecasted to continue to go up. So are your numbers taking into consideration that projected increase in cost of natural gas?
So with the projected increase in cost of natural gas also comes a projected increase in cost of electricity. So an electric system will still be more expensive than a natural gas system because both go up as the price of natural gas goes up. Because unfortunately, in New England, we have a lot of natural gas electric generators. And on days when, like heating days in the winter, when the price of natural gas is high and everybody's using it to heat their homes, electricity prices skyrocket as well. So they're both projected to go up at similar rates.
Okay, so can I continue, Mr. Chairman?
Follow up?
So I thought that, I thought we were going to be generating the electricity from the landfill.
Yes.
So, why would the cost of natural gas to produce electricity affect us if the electricity we're using is coming from our own gas? We're not buying the gas, we have the gas from the landfill.
So I understand. We would be purchasing the electricity from the landfill every month. We would get a bill from the environmental power partners. From the environmental power partners. I'm just going to shorten it to EPP for the rest of this meeting. We would still be buying electricity from EPP every single year in the same way that we purchase from Eversource. So we would be getting a 20% discount, but we could see those energy prices rise as well.
And if I may, I just want to make sure we're clear that we're talking about almost, I think, I could be wrong here, two distinct alternative energy solutions. So one is actually the heating of the building using the methane and we would have hot water supply. And then if we didn't go in that direction, if we went in the direction of the microgrid, later on down the line, we could look to use electricity with hot water pumps. So so two different types of energy strategies that would use the landfill is sort of what's outlined.
I thank you, Tim, because sometimes I get this tunnel vision when it comes to energy. I do want to point out that there is opportunity to electrify that building with heat pumps in the future after it's made. So we would start off with a natural gas system, and then we could decrease the amount of natural gas we use and increase the amount of electricity we use using a heat pump system. So, and then we would have a natural gas backup. So if the heat pumps fail or equipment needs to be changed, we would have a heat pump system. Also, natural gas still needs to be online to run the generator that would need to be there.
Okay, so
Follow up?
please, thank you. So I guess I'm not completely following why the electricity that's generated from the landfill, why the company that is producing that electricity from the gas from the landfill, why the price of natural gas would affect, what they would be able to charge us. If they were buying the gas from, Energy North, I understand Energy North produces the gas from various ways, but if we're buying the gas from this company that's getting the gas from the landfill, what, the gas,
So I answered your question as if I was talking about the ISO New England energy market. So in the ISO New England.
Excuse me, Ms. Brown, if you
I'm
do
sorry.
turn, these are very directional microphones, so
Got
we
it.
haven't seen Mr. Jim come out yet. But if you could pull it closer as you turn your head, that may help.
You know, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, there's a historical answer to that.
Pardon?
There's a history to that, which I think Alderman Jettie is really asking about.
Oh, sure.
So you're really asking, like, if the gas is coming from the landfill, why are we paying for the electricity generated by it, right? And the answer is there's a contract with EPP. And this happened under, a previous administration, but EPP came in and basically agreed to do two things. Number one, pay for the construction of the gas generating plant, so they own that. And number two, there had been a long-standing dispute with the previous operator. They paid to buy the plant from someone else. City didn't need to pay anything to buy the plant. The plant had been owned by a previous energy producer, and there was a long-standing dispute with that producer, and the city sought to terminate the contract with the previous operator of that facility, the gas energy facility. They had paid and owned it. And the city tried to terminate the contract, or did terminate the contract, but then they sued the city in a federal lawsuit. And, it was messy for reasons I don't really recall exactly, but, it wasn't a clean case. And so EPP came in, bought out and paid to buy out the previous provider with no cost to the city and settle the lawsuit and pay to do that. So in exchange for their putting out the money to acquire the facility and pay off, I think it was $500,000 to the previous supplier. So pay for the facility plus settle the case for the city. The agreement was that they have the right to sell the power and realize the income from it. That's the deal that the city has with EPP going back, 10 years maybe a little more. And so they can sell the power to us or to someone else. They have the right to do whatever they want with it. And so this deal, as I understand it, would suggest that we would buy the power from them at a certain price. And if we buy the lines from Eversource, and EPP, then we wouldn't have to pay the transmission charge. So we'd simply be paying for kind of the base rate for electricity with no transmission charge, which is more than the much more than the cost of the electricity itself. And that is why I hope that is somewhat clear. That is why that's why we have to pay for the electricity generated by the gas coming out of the landfill.
Okay, could I?
I think
And I don't know if I was clear. I don't know, that was pretty complicated. I don't know if I was clear enough, so if you have further clarification, please let me know.
I do, could I?
Alderman Jettie?
So is the bottom line that this company is EPP, if I got that right? So they have the right to charge us whatever the going rate is for electricity based on what other people are paying for gas? So we're locked into that, that's the bottom line of that?
Yes. They have the right to sell the electricity on the open market, but which is what they're doing now. And, but we are entering this, if we enter this agreement, we would be buying it from them and not paying a transmission charge.
Okay.
And it was just, there was a little more to it. I mean, the city, I think, do they help pay for the expansion of the gas collection system? No, we pay for that.
No.
Okay. And who puts it in? We do, yeah. But we have an obligation to collect, you know, an environmental obligation to collect the gas. And the question going back, you know, all those years was, you know, who was gonna pay to, you know, create the plant that would convert the gas, burn the gas and convert it to electricity. And there have been two, you know, as I explained, there had been a previous contract, and now there's a contract with EPP that bought out the previous contract.
Okay.
And that agreement, we could, you know, I'm sure it's on file, we could show you that, the deal that was made with EPP when they took over and the lawsuit was resolved.
Okay.
Alderman Jettie, you had several questions. We do have another alderman that has, and we will get back to you.
Okay,
So
thank
I'll
you.
recognize Alderman Dowd at this time.
So if we enter this agreement with EPP, we're probably going to enter, I know we're going to enter into a contractual agreement. And I'm sure that our attorneys are going to make sure that it's beneficial to the city. But there's probably going to be an escalation charge. Everything goes up in price. They're going to have operating expenses increase. So I'm sure in the contract, there will be a period when they can increase the price per whatever it is, kilowatt hour or whatever, because their operating costs are going up. And they're in this to make a profit. So they aren't going to get to a point where they can lose money. They're going to have an escalation clause in the contract. I don't know what it is yet because we haven't entered into a contract agreement yet, but that's why the costs would go up.
Okay, Alderman Jettie, did you have,
Yeah, I have, yes, thank you.
you have several more?
Yes.
Okay.
So you mentioned, well, one of the points I wanted to ask you about is this analysis is a dollars and cents cost analysis. You know, I think you agree with me that there is more cost to than just the dollars and cents. You know, the cost, the initial cost, and the you know, the long range projected maintenance cost, but. And what about the cost to the environment to continue to burn fossil fuels? And I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? You know, how you know, how this would affect that aspect of it?
I really appreciate the way that you're framing this, Alderman Jettie, because the effect that humans have, the effect that humans have on the environment is
So it
incredibly
would help,
important.
if I could just suggest, instead of talking to me, if you could talk to the screen,
Sorry.
that'll help you.
I'll talk to the screen, but I'm really looking at you in my soul.
I want to go that far.
But the environmental cost to a system like this, it does matter. But here we are providing ourselves with the opportunity to stop using natural gas in the future and implement an even more efficient system, which would be a heat pump system after the building is built. So we wouldn't be on natural gas forever if we implement a heat pump project in the future. So we aren't eliminating the possibility to decrease our use of fossil fuels. We are opening the door to be able to have a more efficient system in the future. I know that right now the project is on a time crunch, so there isn't enough time to redesign the whole entire thing, but there is an avenue to have a completely electric HVAC system. Sorry, see, I can't just stop. Just looking straight. So the answer is yes, there is a cost to burning fossil fuels to the environment, and we do have the ability to decrease that cost on this building in the future.
And could I follow up, please?
Okay, Alderman Jettie, at some point I would like to move this to go to a vote. You know, I don't know if everybody has made up their mind, and you can seek additional information if you so wish, but I will allow you to continue, but please keep in mind, you know, do we need to get to a vote on this?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, you know,
Okay.
understand so that when I vote.
Well, I'm just courteous to the others that I think they already come to a conclusion.
Okay, well, that's enlightening, but thank you. So my other question is, You know, when you talk about, you talked about this would allow us to convert to a heat pump system in the future. Why would we waste money, developing a different type of system? This, I don't know, are we still on the hot water? Are we gonna be heating this building with hot water, in the short term? And then maybe converting to a heat pump system in the future? Why would we spend the money on the hot water system to begin with? Why not look towards the heat pumps to begin with, right away?
I think that's a good question. I do want to allow Director Photo and Tim to help answer this, but I know that the project is on a time crunch, and if we don't move forward now, there could be an issue with actually having the project be finished and having the funding there for the project. So this is the solution and avenue I found to be able to address that use of fossil fuels on the building in the future. I do not think there's enough time to redesign it completely, but I do know that there's this option so that we can fix that. So that's my big answer, but I do
If I
wanna,
may,
yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
And Doria Brown is absolutely correct. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. It's a timing issue, and I made a point earlier to make clear that this has been an iterative process, and we just recently learned of the full magnitude of what this potential microgrid solution could be for us. And it's one that sounds very plausible, and so I would suggest, if it's, something of interest, that we could, on a parallel course, continue down the path of developing this project. But understanding, because of timelines and time constraints, we would not be able to implement this microgrid solution now and also keep the building on track time-wise.
How much delay would be caused by a redesign?
Well, we have Janet here who could answer that question, and I think Dove, who's via Zoom, could probably answer either one of those questions.
Let's, Dov, if you want to take that, this is Janet for time frame.
Sure. It would depend on the system that's ultimately developed. Right now, the project is moving forward and all of the equipment has been bought for the original design, which is heating by natural gas. So that basically we would have to start over with the HVAC design and then purchase and installation. I would imagine that would take months to years to start over.
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
And so for those reasons, and I knew that, and when this microgrid solution came up, I thought to myself, this sounds like a wonderful idea if we could do it on a parallel course, but we really need to proceed with the current project that we've already started pursuing. But again, this option didn't become real until, I would say, a week or so ago, or a few days ago, when we actually got the Eversource quote from EPP. So I had a little trouble there as well. And so, recognizing the realities of the situation, we're trying to provide you all with the alternative solutions that you may be looking for from an energy perspective, but then also balance that with understanding that we're trying to deliver a building on budget and on time. Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
There is one additional caveat that I would like to make, and I hate even bringing it up, but in fairness, I look at my role through this building project is to protect the owner's contingency as much as possible. And I do that, as some of you know, I'm very diligent about that. It's too early in the project now to say that we could afford this $200,000, but could we, in theory, and I don't want to be held to this, but could we, in theory, fast forward to the fall, if we had the money available, look to use this $200,000 to purchase the microgrid. That would be something I would feel comfortable coming back to you and making that recommendation. So it wouldn't be an additional $200,000 on debt service to the taxpayer. But it's too early right now to use the existing contingency in that regard. But I do want to flag it for you that it's well on our radar, and it may be a great way to continue moving this project forward if it's a priority for this group.
Okay, I do have two, Alderman Gouveia, and then we'll get to Director Photo, and then Director Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so one clarifying question we've talked about a lot, obviously. So to me, in real layman's terms, it sounds we can stick with Eversource, and that would be nothing up front and market prices. Or we move over to a microgrid, which seems to be one of the better plans. And that would be $200,000 up front, and that would be like 20% off the market rate from EPP. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I have that all straight.
Oh,
Thank you.
and
Yeah, well, I
one
think you're
more.
gonna say the
Yeah.
same thing.
Or it's a memo in front of you, separate from this project. If you want to go in this direction for an additional $800,000, which we would need to get appropriated, you could have this other alternative as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the purpose of today's meeting, just to remind everybody, is alternative number 5. But we have additional information that has been portrayed, I should say. So seeing that with the, and I'm gonna do exactly what Ms. Brown has done, Environmental Power Partners, we could take that up at a later date. It's not a 5-alarm fire at this particular time, so. Director Photo?
I just wanted to bring up the point that when we discussed alternative energy options, such as using the heat from the generators at EPP's power plant, we always discussed that we would need some sort of redundancy, just in case
Right.
those generators ever went down. So we would want to make sure that we had the natural gas heating in place in the event that we needed it.
Yeah, and question on that. With natural gas backup, not having it as a primary source, there was a higher price if we went into that.
The memo reads $31,000.
$31,000 for that backup, which would have been higher than the typical rate. Okay.
Which you don't charge, Liberty does not charge you now because it's the primary.
It's the primary. Okay, and Commissioner Shea.
Thank you. I just want to wrap my head a little bit more around how the natural gas flows at the site. So we collect natural gas, and a portion of that natural gas is used to produce electricity. Is there excess beyond that?
So we don't produce natural gas.
Methane, okay.
Yeah, just to be very clear on the record, we are not a natural gas producer. We would be burning methane, which the DPW already has to do for their environmental permit. So they're using that burning of the methane to produce electricity, to send that into the grid right now and sell that to the ISO New England system at market rate. And if we were to do a microgrid, that energy would go to our building and excess would go into the Eversource grid. And we would have the ability to use that excess energy production to power more operations as we expand on that plot with electric vehicle infrastructure and new buildings. So that $200,000 investment would be a guarantee that we would have access to that 15,000 megawatt hours before anybody else.
Thank you. And a follow-up.
Follow-up.
Thank you. The majority of energy produced in the Northeast or New Hampshire anyway, I believe comes from natural gas. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
And maybe nuclear second?
so yes, but on a very, very
Macro.
cold day,
Yeah.
it's cold.
Okay.
So.
And so the idea that what we are producing here and sending into the grid is like a full offset isn't quite right, because if the electricity and energy that we were to use was from a combustion energy source, that energy that we do produce would all go into the grid. And the source of the energy that we are using would be non-combustion based. Would that be fair to say?
So I'm trying to understand your question.
Yeah.
Are you asking me if there would be emissions associated with using energy from the landfill gas to energy plant?
So, yes, but in tandem. So we collect methane, we burn the methane.
Yes.
It's better to burn the methane because the greenhouse gas emissions are far less enduring than methane going straight to atmosphere. We burn that methane, it produces electricity. If that electricity doesn't touch us and goes into the grid, it's part of the makeup of the general capacity for the region. People use it. If we use that energy, the region needs to use the energy that we are using. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. If we use that energy, it's being replaced somewhere else in the system, most likely by natural gas.
Yes, so the electricity grid and how it's represented on our energy bills is the result of creative accounting.
Mm-hmm.
If you just look at the flow of energy and where it's going, if you were to see a building with a solar array, the energy from that solar array would go to the building that it's on, and it would go to power the community around it, right?
Yep.
So right now we have a landfill gas to energy plant. That energy, if you look at the energy flow, is powering the community around it. If we were to create a microgrid, that energy would go first to power our building, and then it would still, excess would go and power the community around it. And the EPP would have an agreement, or they would pay the market, or they would be paid the market rate for any excess energy that they still put into the grid from Eversource. But we would pay EPP as our direct provider for electricity, because they would be our utility and our supplier. We wouldn't be taking away, per se, any excess energy unless there was infrastructure in place to use that excess energy in the first place. We wouldn't have just a bunch of dead energy going nowhere.
So when we use the energy, the neighborhood around us needs to get energy from somewhere else. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. And if that energy is coming from the grid, and the grid is primarily natural gas or coal in the winter, we could be using some other source that allows for that methane generated energy to power the community, which is the broader demand, and using an alternate source that is non-combustion based, and then reducing the total load of combustion-based energy production that we, and therefore the region, are participating in.
So are you trying to point out that in building a building there and using energy directly from the landfill gas energy plant, we're taking away from the community who could be getting that energy from there, and decreasing the renewable energy portfolio for the entire grid?
Not decreasing the renewable energy portfolio, but in not taking advantage of I understand that this methane needs to go somewhere and we need to do something with it. But in not using solar or geothermal, we are not reducing the combustion-based load on the system. And I guess my point is that the idea that this is green, it may be economical, it may help us in terms of our cost to operate the plant, but the idea that it is green and a overall net reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, I don't think that is the case.
May I answer before you
Sure.
jump in? So that is an environmentalist argument that is constantly had. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. The way that I see it as an energy manager and an environmentalist is that we have to burn that landfill gas no matter what. And we are taking advantage of having to burn that and not put it out in the environment by also generating electricity that we put out in the grid. If we were to not generate electricity that way, we would still have to burn that landfill gas. So this is just a byproduct of taking a negative thing, which is putting that emission in the air and having to burn it and creating electricity from that. I see that as a positive because now we've created a energy source that isn't from adding more natural gas or coal into the system. It is from using a environmental nuisance and creating a positive like electricity that we will be able to use for our community and for our DPW building if that is what you choose.
Okay.
So just the way you slice it, we have to burn that methane no matter what. We choose to create electricity with it so that there is some benefit there.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity for the dialogue. I think it's important to have
Yeah.
these conversations. I do have one, and it's my last, and it will be a brief and answerable question or two-part. One is, for the geothermal, I understand that the heat capture, like there's a reason that cars don't have a heat capturing system in them to improve their efficiency to a great degree, because the idea of capturing heat is just such a difficult thing and not particularly like efficient unless you're on a spaceship and you need to do something like that. So I get that the payback on that is not good. The geothermal piece, could you reiterate what the payback is on the geothermal piece? Thank you.
So I do not have an entire payback for geothermal power. When it was first explored, just for drilling the well, it would be $650,000 just to drill the well without the equipment needed to heat the building. And that had something like a 50-year payback with that $13,000 heating savings. So.
Okay. And then last part to the question, what is the real life of this building? Like,
If I may.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, because I did want to bring this point up actually earlier. So, a life of the building, anywhere from 30 to 50 years on the good end, 50 years. Some people will say 30. I would say if you used 40 years is a good number for, an expected life of the building.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, we do have somebody on the screen, and I do have one myself. Alderman Como, we'll get to you in a second, and we'll go to Alderman Dowd. But my question is, I'm surprised nobody asked this. We have many dumps in Nashua, former dumps in Nashua. Newsel School is one, other facilities. What's the life expectancy of the methane that we have underground? How many years will it be viable?
I'll refer to Lisa. Lisa Photo, Director of Public Works. Are you asking about the closed landfills?
Well, in other words, if we invest into this methane with the grid project, will we run out of methane at some futuristic point within the life expectancy of this particular building?
No, Lisa Photo, Director of Public Works. No, we would not, because we have the life expectancy of the landfill is probably another, with our phase 4, probably another 50 years. So there will be sections of the landfill that will start producing less, but there are others that will produce more. So it'll even off.
Very
So-
good. Good. Alderman Como?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could ask through you to Director Cummings, are you looking from this body tonight for a recommendation for a course of action, either, to stay with Eversource or to proceed with this grid plan?
What we're looking for tonight is to decide what to do with alternative number 5, which was the Alderman Jetty's questions and proposal. Depending upon the vote of that particular matter, I know we commingled the discussion here, and I can see where some people might think there might be some confusion and contamination, but I will ask after the vote of how it goes with alternative number 5, whether we should still charge Director Cummings with a direction upon where to go, and we'll put that to the vote of the board with possibly, let's put them underneath the microscope. Let's see if we can hear something back by, you mentioned September. Would that be adequate?
I would prefer November, but I'll settle with October.
Oh, negotiations. But we'll do something.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, I was more curious in the, for the sake of brevity, if there was a motion before us that, I could.
This has been
can we urge us to move the question, or, is there a way we can get to the vote? Selfishly, I have other commitments tonight, and I don't
Well,
wanna.
I will
We can discuss
open
the
up.
benefits of green energy all night.
So if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So to get to Alderman Como's point, if someone would want to make a motion to recommend that,
I would love to.
that we pursue $792,000 for additional authorization for the uses as specified in the memo before you dated April 4th, 2022, I would be happy to start getting the legislation going and to seek bond authorization, which is what would be required if you so wanted to move in the direction of the alternative number 5.
Okay, we're gonna open it up, and Alderman Como, would that be your motion?
I was actually going to make a motion to recommend that we proceed with the original plan and purchase the energy from Eversource and reserve the right to revisit the microgrid alternative at the end of the project if we had a budget surplus, as Director Cummings mentioned earlier, might be a possibility.
Seeing no other pending motion, I will accept that motion and discussion on the Como motion. Alderman, Commissioner Shea.
So in terms of like how to proceed, so we had a proposal in front of us for geothermal and kind of setting aside this 790. Is that what I'm understanding? The number.
Well,
5?
okay, you're confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, Alderman Como has made a motion basically to look into environmental power partners at this particular time. And I would like, Alderman Como, you would like a report back, am I correct in saying that, from Director Cummings by at least November or October on that?
Yes, I mean, if I understand correctly, we had a plan original on how to power this building. And my recommendation would be we stick with the original plan, which I believe was to just use the grid and use Eversource, and then continue our research into the microgrid from EPP. And if we have the budget surplus towards the end of the project, and we believe we can fit that cost in, the 200,000, that we revisit that possibility later in the process and not hold up any more of the process at this time and just go with the original plan of Eversource.
Okay. So everybody understand, this has nothing to do with Article 5? Okay. Did you have some, Commissioner Shea?
Yeah, I understand and I support the motion to move forward. I would just like to, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I would like to reiterate, if I did already mention it, my discontent that the geothermal option was not explored further in earnest earlier in the process. A real feasibility was not presented, and the elected body, it seems to me, and I was not around then, but it seems to me that the elected body did not have the opportunity to give due consideration to that concept. And I may be wrong, I wasn't here in the process then, but that's my sense of the issue, and I have no additional thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Again, the motion is not on geothermal, it is on looking at the electricity, just to remind. Mr. Mayor?
So the motion is to not make or to not
Stay the
do
course.
the buyout of the lines now.
Correct.
When does a decision on that have to be made if we were going to go forward with that?
I believe, and I defer to Dory or Lisa, but there is no time sensitivity to it. We could probably do that in parallel course.
Yes. I hate to say that something doesn't have time sensitivity because I feel that.
Could you get closer to the mic?
I hate to say that something has absolutely no time sensitivity because I think that if we were to be, or you were to be interested in buying the lines and creating a microgrid, that would need to be done close to when the project is finished, or that you would have to make a decision on that. But there is no time sensitivity right now to make that decision today.
Right, and Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, I think we have a November,
December.
report back on this, to
All right.
exploring on it.
I apologize. The building is scheduled to be completed in December.
Okay,
And
yes.
yes, we could have a report back sooner. I am very sensitive to the idea of using $200,000 of our contingency right now, this early in the project. But hearing this conversation, clearly we could earmark it, set it aside. As we get further along in the project, knowing that it's a priority of this group, I could come back to you, make a recommendation, and if it's so your pleasure, we could use the funds in that manner.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, I just wanted to make it clear that, I mean, I think that, okay, we wait to see if we have savings, but if we don't, I still think we should do the project with the buyout of the lines. I mean, a 20-year payback is pretty good, and we know we can shorten that by instituting heat pumps, or whenever we do electric vehicles, it will shorten the payback. If we go forward with anything else out there, it would shorten the payback. So we should definitely do this and not say, oh, we can't afford this, because a 20-year payback is and it will end up being shorter, is good enough, at least in my judgment.
Director Cummings?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Again, my suggestion, doing it that way, was to avoid adding any type of additional debt service, but.
I get that.
Another way we could come at it is we know we have an escrowing process coming up. And I don't know what that would look like, but maybe we could look to set aside additional monies through the escrow process, which would be in a quicker time frame, and maybe that would be a plausible alternative.
Well, of course, Director Cummings is so good at managing these projects that I suspect in the end, we will have a $200,000 surplus, and therefore Alderman Como's desire will be satisfied. But I'm just saying, I think the 20-year payback is good. I think the idea of buying our own power, buying the power from our own landfill is good, and we could work on shortening the 20-year payback. So, in the unlikely event that Mr. Cummings does not save us the $200,000, I still think the project has merit.
Very good. Commissioner Shoneman?
Commissioner Shoneman, Public Works. I think that we're getting a little off track again.
We have several times, yes.
The vote before us is, do we want, according to the memo, do we want to have an alternative hot water supply system added to the office building for the cost of over $800,000, or do we want to go with natural gas? The end. The EPP stuff comes later.
This was brought up, and at any time, a member of the committee can make a motion, and where new facts were presented by Ms. Brown.
But I want to know what I'm voting about.
Okay, well,
Okay,
what
so
right
that's-
now, and again,
That's our vote.
again,
right?
we are voting on the environmental power partners, and the discussion on that is the discussion we've been having, and that's where the motion was made. And to have Director Cummings continue to look into it. We're not deciding to go for with it, but going to open the door for negotiations with Ms. Brown to come up with the feasibility. After this particular vote, we will have a motion to discuss, like you say, Article number 5. But this, by the rules, this motion was made first.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Could we have the clerk please read the motion as he has it written down?
There's one in every group.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna ask Alderman Cuomo to repeat the motion he made.
Sure, no problem. So my motion was to proceed with the original plan for the building in regards to the, only this has nothing to do with the heat. The electric plan, which I believe was to purchase from the group Eversource. And the purpose of that motion was to allow the project to continue moving forward, and we can visit the idea of doing the microgrid through EPP at any point in the future. This doesn't preclude us from doing that, but the original plan for the building was to power it via Eversource, so this motion would be to continue with that. And my intention, Mr. Chair, was to, at the end, make a motion to move on with the heat question, but I was hoping to separate them, that we could have clearer discussions on the two issues. It seemed like we were mixing the electricity and the heat together.
Yeah, I know, we're losing people, it did get
Electric
confusing.
conversation and then one heat conversation, we could move forward a little clearly.
So therefore, Alderman Como, are you moving the question?
If you believe that would be appropriate, Mr.
I
Chair,
think it would be.
I would move the question.
Yeah, before we start losing everybody. Thank you. Director Cummings, would you be so kind in your interpretation what the motion is? Just so everybody would know.
So I have Alderman Cuomo made a motion to proceed with the original plan as outlined and designed with the construction of the DPW Administrative Office building, and to continue looking to explore the environmental power partners proposal for a microgrid system, and make a report back to you in early fall on where we stand, and to give you an update on the owner's contingency.
Okay.
Parliamentary note, you get somebody on Zoom, so you'll have to call a roll call.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to call a roll call, and I didn't call for a vote to move the question, but without. Como, yeah, he did call it, but I didn't call for the vote to recognize and move the motion. But without objection, I am moving the motion. Any objection? Seeing none, we are moving the motion. We have one objection, Alderman
I
Jettie.
don't think you can debate a move the question.
Yeah.
It's not debatable.
Yeah, sorry, Alderman Jettie. Okay.
So this is a
With a roll
parliamentary
call.
inquiry.
Okay.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Parliamentary inquiry.
So by moving the question, this eliminates, anyone who's not sure about what this motion means, it eliminates the possibility of further explanation. Do I understand that correctly?
Alderman Jettie, you've been an alderman, you've seen questions in the past get moved. And I think we've been discussing in the presentation the environmental power partners by Ms. Brown and everything. I don't know really what to say. If there is anybody else, I can ask for that motion to be withdrawn as a courtesy to you, but I think most of the people have an idea on what is being discussed here. Is that a fair assumption? Commissioner Shea.
Parliamentary inquiry. So if there's an additional objection, you would hold the moving of the question?
No, I call for, there is a motion to move the question.
Okay.
Which is a legitimate motion. In other words, to cease discussion and to move it.
You can vote yes or no on it.
Right, you can vote yes or no on it, okay? All right, so we had the motion read. You should what, Mr.
Do you want me to call the roll?
Yes, and at this time, since we have somebody on Zoom, we'll call the roll.
Okay, Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
No.
Alderman Cuomo,
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier,
Yes.
Mayor Donchis,
No.
Commissioner Moriarty,
No.
Commissioner Shoneman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon,
No.
Commissioner Shea.
No.
4 in the affirmative and 5 in the negative. The motion fails. Discussion continues.
Okay, well, actually, the motion fails, so now we move on to the next item. And just understand, by not passing this, we are not going to enter any discussions in the future with the environmental power partners.
Excuse me,
So that killed it.
no, that was only to move the question.
Oh, that was to move the question. Man,
So-
I'm chairing
The
this.
the original
You guys
motion,
got me confused now.
the original motion that Alderman Como made is on the floor for either further discussion or passing.
Okay, so it's open. So I will open the floor to anybody who still has any misgivings on this.
Yes,
Yes,
Kevin
Commissioner
Moriarty. Yes, I was thinking if Alderman Cuomo would withdraw the motion, I would make a motion to include the microgrid concept into the present-day plan.
Okay, I'm gonna accept that as a motion, then we'll go to discussion on the motion.
Alderman Como's gonna have to withdraw his motion for him to make that motion.
Okay, parliamentary, Alderman Como, do you want to withdraw it?
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, I would prefer to vote on the motion as presented, and if it fails, we'd be free to make the subsequent motion after that.
Sounds fair. Okay, therefore, other discussion, Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, so I think it's, perfectly permissible for us to move to amend Alderman Como's motion to add the microgrid thing as Commissioner Moriarty suggested. Commissioner Moriarty was asking whether he would withdraw his motion to add that, but I think, he and I will make a motion to add, to amend Alderman Como's motion to add the pursuit of the microgrid concept, and I'd like to speak on that.
I have a question. So there is an amendment to the motion. We'll discuss the amendment. And the amendment is to add this. So my question on, since it's open up and you got to speak, is this immediately, in other words, without negotiations?
I think it's an expression by this body that we wish to pursue the microgrid concept, I think as the mayor indicated, the $200,000, I agree with him, is an expense that I'm willing to back. If we have 200,000 left in contingency, that's a source of funding for it. But there are other sources of funding that we could come up with to pay for this. But I think, what I'm encouraging this committee to do is to say, yes, we'd like to pursue the microgrid concept. And we're willing to pay
I'm trying to clarify, Alderman Jettie. Funding is one thing, but entering into a legal agreement is another. So, am I correct? That's what, I just want the clarification here.
Well, there's
Yes,
Yeah, I didn't hear, we're not gonna enter into any agreement without negotiations going through legal.
correct.
So it's not that we're, Alderman Jettie wants us to approve the concept and have us move forward, which means that we would enter into an agreement through legal, with this company to do as was explained in the grid. As far as funding, that's a separate issue.
Exactly.
Let's not confuse things and, because we don't know where the funding's coming from yet.
Which is another committee of budget, right, correct.
Having trained Mr. Cummings, I think he will have 200K left in the end, but we have other ways of funding it.
Correct. Alderman Jettie, did you want to discuss now that we have that clarification?
I'll just briefly you know, I'm in agreement with what the mayor said, that we ought to pursue this, and that, you know, and I think the committee ought to direct Director Cummings to pursue this. It's, you know, as opposed to, you know, waiting until November or October or whatever to look at it further. You know, I would like us as a committee to say to Director Cummings and Ms. Brown that, yeah, this concept that she's come up with is something that we're interested in pursuing. You know, there's no legal contract before us to approve or disapprove. You know, we're not that stage yet, so it doesn't prevent us
Good.
from, you know, negotiating something further. It's just directing, you know, Mr. Cummings, Director Cummings is looking for direction. We're trying to direct him. At least that's what I'm.
Well, I think that's what the other motion did too.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so my understanding is we have the Cuomo motion still on the floor, which does not bring in the microgrid concept. Putting that aside, if I'm understanding it correctly, you, depending on whether that gets voted or not, or amended, and I'm not hearing an amendment right now, but then there would be.
I did make an amendment.
There is, and that's putting the microgrid in with the
Okay.
Como, and then
So-
we'll vote as amended.
Okay, so then let me read this and see if it captures what you're looking for, Alderman Jettie. To proceed with the original plan, with the purpose to continue with the current design and construction of the DPW Administrative Office Building, and to charge Director Cummings and Energy Manager Brown and Director Photo to continue pursuing the microgrid concept with Environmental Power Partners, and to make a report back to this committee in July with further details and a plan.
That's fine with me. In fairness, that would be my amendment. We'd have to vote on the amendment.
Right, we're gonna vote. Stand by, we're still in discussion, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, in hearing the amendment, I'm not entirely certain that the colleague from Ward 5 understood my motion as I intended it. I also agree with the mayor and the microgrid. My only intention was to speed the process up so that we don't have any construction delays. We're proceeding as planned, and we're developing the EPP project in parallel on the side. As Director Cummings had mentioned earlier, I liked the phrase parallel. That was my intention. I was not saying that I don't want to do the EPP plan. I just don't want to have to rip up any specs right now. I want the building to proceed on schedule, and when we have a plan to do something else, we can. So if the amendment is what accomplishes that, then so be it. But that's what my intention for the original motion was. So, you know, I support the amendment.
All right, the chair, for clarification then on what Alderman Como has brought up. Janet and Dove, do you have any oversight that you can see with this opening up the discussion on this cause any construction delays?
Janet Slamenda, HKT Architects. I don't believe so, but I would like to speak to my electrical engineers to see if there's any impact on any of the infrastructure that's already part of the plan and already approved and, you know, planned for. All the underground utilities are in, slabs been poured, steel's going up. I think, Dove, if you have any further comments?
Dove Jaffe, Harvey Construction. No, my understanding of the project is that the current electrical infrastructure that is being part of this new building is completely independent of the source of the power that comes into the building, whether that is Eversource as originally planned or in the future a microgrid that should be accommodated without any changes to what we are currently building.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Dow.
I could be wrong, but the first part of Alderman Como's motion, I don't know if it's his intent, is puts a complete squash on item number 5. He's saying that we're not gonna change any of the current plans going forward, which means changes none of the drawings or any of the things that have already been purchased, which I would be totally against doing that in the first place anyway. So I have no problem if we wanna do this all in one fell swoop, but I believe the way he read his motion and the way it got read back, it says we're not changing any of the drawings or any of the current plans or any of the current equipment. So item 5 is off the table if we pass this the way it's written.
That's the way I interpret it as well, too.
Mr. Chair,
Everybody
if I
clear
may.
on that? Although, keep in mind, we're getting ahead of the game, trying to keep the rope tie down here. We're only supposed to be discussing the amendment, but what Alderman Dowd has brought up is actually true. We can open up the discussion on the main amendment again. Okay, seeing if there's no other further questions on the amendment, I will call the roll. Okay, can the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Chairman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Como,
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier,
Yes.
Mayor Donches,
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner Shea,
Yes.
and that is unanimous, all in favor.
Okay, motion passes. Now we're gonna open up, hopefully, discussion on the Como amendment, as so eloquently presented by Alderman Dowd. This would basically affect alternative number 5, keep the current thing, as well with the addition of what changes we made to the amendment. Any discussion on that?
Just
Alderman Dowd.
clarifications were brought up earlier. You were concerned, Commissioner, about, we're taking electricity off the grid if we use it for this building. That may be true, but the grid changes every single day, almost every, probably single hour. Pennachuck just put 4 acres of power onto the grid 2 weeks ago. And that is so far more significant than what we'll use in this building that it's negligible. So that's not gonna be an issue. The other thing is, assuming this goes through, every time you change an engineering drawing, it's a lot of money.
Mhm.
And it also takes a lot of time. So anything that changes engineering drawings, and believe me, I work on this every single day with the school projects. We don't change anything after we have construction documents because it's a huge, huge expense. And to make the change that number 5 would do would cause the project to be late, would cause the project to have incurred significant increased costs, which would mean it'd have to go back to the Board of Aldermen for additional bonding, and I don't think that's practical, so I would not support that at all.
Further discussion, Commissioner Shea.
I do not support option number 5 here. I think that it's an inefficient concept. I think that trying to capture every single biotherm or thermal unit or whatever that's created by this methane burning system is not a good idea. It's very expensive. The payback is a very long period of time. And I certainly wouldn't want to delay the project, but that's completely independent of why I don't support that. I do think that I would reject the notion that offsetting what's used by the grid is a non-issue. I do think that when we are having a grid that's producing electricity, burning fossil fuels, if we are participating in that system with this building, in a situation where that electricity could otherwise go to the grid and we could take the step to provide an alternative to power this site in terms of the HVAC. I think that that was worth due consideration. As we further down the line explore the concept of heat pumps and an additional garage that will require some amount of climate control, I would like to see us revisit the concept of geothermal. My understanding is that geothermal in its deployment is similar to a central air system where you drill this very expensive hole in the ground, and then above ground you have a unit that is tied to the building's HVAC, and it runs 50 some odd degree air. And so in the summer, that 50 some odd degree air needs a little extra, it brings the temperature of the building down. In the winter, it brings the temperature of the building up and requires a little bit of supplemental energy to add heat to that system. It is my belief that it's very realistic to anticipate that we may be able to drill one hole. I don't know what the capacity of this quoted concept was, but it's quite plausible that we may be able to leverage that single hole in the ground to help support the HVAC systems of both a garage and this office building. And though the upfront cost is significant, I do believe that it's an important avenue worth exploring. I know that the idea of bonding additional amounts is not savory, it's not exciting, but I think it's important to really give due consideration to, as we consider all projects, and that is what I have to say. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the Como motion? Commissioner Moriarty.
The Como motion is a little complicated. I would prefer, Mr. Chairman, a separate motion just to talk about alternate number 5, whether we're for or against it. Just a separate motion to keep the minutes clear, because right now, the motion doesn't really specifically address.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yeah, point of order. Go ahead.
I've tried to make this as clear as I could, and I may not have done a very good job of that. My intention was to separate the electric from the heat, because in listening to the discussions, we kept bouncing back and forth between electric and heat. So my intention was, if we could put the electric part to bed, we could move on to talking about geothermal and all of the other alternative heat sources. But my motion was to separate out the electric part of it, which, unless I'm misunderstanding the process, does not have anything to do with number 5 or the geothermal. It's just the power for the building, which is not natural gas or geothermal. It's the electricity. That's why I made the motion that I did. We could move on from the electric and then have a discussion about the heat, because we kept bouncing back and forth and I felt like we weren't making any progress.
Thank you, Alderman Como. Alderman Dowd.
I totally agree with Commissioner Moriarty. And I'm going to make a motion to amend Como's motion to eliminate.
This would be the final
Yes,
amendment.
final amendment. To eliminate the first part of the wording that says that we won't be changing any drawings or anything, and just focus on the, I think what Alderman Jettie wanted, to move the question to, not move the question, but to pass us going with BPP, and so, could you read the first part of the motion? I'll make the amendment to take out that first part of the wording.
Yes, so the first line is to proceed with the original plan with the purpose to continue with the current design and construction of the DPW Administrative Office Building.
All right, stop right there. Take that out. That'll be my amendment.
So your amendment would be to strike, to proceed with the original plan with the Purpose to continue with the current design and construction of the DPW Administrative Office Building. Striking that, it would now read to charge Director Cummings, Director Photo, NAG Manager Brown to continue to pursue the microgrid concept with environmental power partners and to make a report back to this committee in July with further details and plan.
And I'll speak to my amendment. The reason, that eliminates the confusion. We're going to get, hopefully, past that we're going with the electricity energy plan that Dr. Brown has gone forth with. It eliminates the confusion on level 5, and then we can make a motion on alternative 5 and do whatever the committee wants. So I think we should vote on this amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Dowd amendment? Seeing none, can the clerk call the roll?
No, Alderman Como is participating via Zoom. So if I may, Mr. Chair, call the roll?
Yes.
Thank you. Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Como.
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier.
Yes.
Mayor Donchis.
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman.
Lemon, yes.
Lemon, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Lemon. And then Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we'll put that one down, and now we get to discuss Article 5.
No,
Oh.
we have to vote on the amended,
Oh,
so we
yeah,
can get
thank you. Man, you guys are
the
losing
final
me.
motion amended.
Okay, on the amended motion, including, this is the bill in its entirety, okay? Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Como.
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier.
Yes.
Mayor Donchis.
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon.
Yes.
And Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
And that was unanimous.
Motion passes. Alderman Dow.
I would like to make a motion to cease any discussion of going forward with alternative 5
Okay.
and not go forward with the alternative 5.
All right, there's a motion. Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Shea,
I would like to make a motion to move the question.
to move the question?
Yes.
All in favor of moving the question?
You gotta do it by roll.
We're gonna have to do it by roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Como.
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier.
Yes.
Mayor Donchis.
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon.
Yes.
And then Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
And that was unanimous to move the question.
Okay, now on the Dowd amendment,
No,
And-
it's not an amendment, it's a motion.
on the Dowd motion.
Parliamentary
on the-
inquiry, please.
Yes, Alderman Como?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify, a yes vote on the Dowd motion is to eliminate option 5 and proceed without it.
You are correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will have the clerk call for a vote.
Yes, Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Como.
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier.
Yes.
Mayor Donchis.
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon.
Yes.
And then Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
And that was unanimous.
Okay, seeing no other items before the board, I would like to thank you. Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor?
I move we adjourn.
Oh, before you, a motion to adjourn is always in order, but the chair would like to take a liberty. Basically, it did get confusing. I got a little bit confused. thank you for working with me on this, and thank you all. I just wanted to thank you on that. And we have a motion to adjourn by, huh?
Sorry.
It has to be by roll call,
Tim?
absolutely. Oh,
May I say one thing? I just want to mention that the Board of Public Works meeting tomorrow will be held here in the Aldermanic Chamber rather than in the auditorium because they're having technical difficulties in the auditorium. So I just wanted to let the commissioners know, still at 4 o'clock, but here instead of the auditorium.
we
Thank
do
you,
charge
sorry.
you rent, right?
Yes,
We gotta pay for this, so.
I will write you a check.
All right, there's a motion to adjourn, and I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Chairman O'Brien.
Yes,
Alderman Dowd, yes. Alderman Jettie, yes. Alderman Como, yes.
Yes.
Alderman Gouvier?
Yep.
Yes. Mayor Donches, yes?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Yes.
yes. Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemon, yes.
Yes.
And then Commissioner Shea, yes. It's
Yes.
unanimous. You're adjourned at 7:50 PM in the evening.
and again, I thank everybody. Thank you very much.